Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Brotherly Love in the District. After a little bit of a break due to finals not exactly being friendly to us, we are back after a little bit of a break, and Jacob is going to go ahead and tell you guys what we're going to get into.
Yeah, so we got a lot of football to catch up on. We have 2 weeks of football to catch up on, and we have another week to analyze. Going on into hockey, both teams still continue to struggle. But there is some positive. The Flyers are starting to get some players back, and the Caps have their first 3-game win streak of the season. And finally, going on into baseball, free agency is in its full swing, and we're going to talk about a big signing for the Phillies. So let's
Wow.
get right into it.
Little pun there at the end there. Free agency in full swing. Was that intended?
Yes, it was.
All right. Well, let's start out going back 2 weeks. We'll start out with the Falcons game, and you guys pull out a close one. I thought the Falcons had a chance to beat you guys, and I thought they would. And I don't entirely blame that loss on Marcus Mariota at the end there. The ball got tipped. It was a close game.
That was just a good defensive play.
Yeah, and it wasn't Kendall Fuller diving for that ball. Like, it wasn't exactly an easy play to make.
Yeah, it was tipped, and then he dove and was able to catch it. So pretty good play on the defense overall, and I think the defense really won us that game. And I'm going to be saying the same thing for the Giants game. The offensive play calling, I think, more is a hindrance to this team because we've shown we can run the ball, but it just seems like there's play calls down the stretch that are really questionable. For example, this week, the game against the Giants and the Falcons game, we were like running quarterback draws on 3rd and 10. And then for some reason on like 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, when we were having success in the run game, we decided to go with some ill-advised play action passes that just didn't really work in theory. So I think it's down to Scott Turner. I understand Heineke isn't the best quarterback, but I think he can do enough under the right system, and I just don't think we have that. We can run the ball, yes, but I think from what I heard that the reason why we started to run the ball is because Ron Rivera went to Scott Turner and said, hey, we need to run the ball, even though Turner was reluctant. But the Falcons game, it was a great win. Our defense really bailed us out. Jack Del Rio has really stepped the defense up recently, and I think he's saved his job.
I think, and I mean, this was always the thing. This has always been the thing since Taylor Heineke was in what got the starting position after Carson Wentz got hurt, and I'm going to continue to say it all the way through the playoffs. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to bode well for you in the playoffs, but you can't hide a quarterback. It's not anymore. In the old NFL, when you could just hand the ball off and the bulk of the game was running the ball, you could get away with it. But you can't hide a quarterback in this day and age. They are such an intricate part of the game, and they handle the ball so much with the passing and everything. He only had 138 yards in that game against the Falcons. This past week against the Giants, which we'll talk about more upcoming, but he had a pretty good game in that one. But in this one, he only had 138 passing yards. He had 2 touchdowns, but one of those, like the flare pass to Brian Robinson, he did nothing. It was a flare pass. Brian Robinson trucked through someone on the sideline and got the touchdown. So that was mostly Brian Robinson, but Taylor Heineke, you can't hide him much, and that's what they're trying to do, and you see it with how much they run the ball. But that's not going to work for you, especially when it comes to the playoffs, because when you get the teams in the playoffs with the coaches who are experienced, that's going to hurt them, and you're not going to be able to hide your quarterback anymore. So it is going to be interesting how because I think Scott Turner, yes, you're trying to run the ball more, and you're saying Scott Turner's a hindrance, but at the same time, Scott Turner probably knows in the back of his head, like, we can't keep on hiding Heineke like we want to, so we need to try to get him to pass the ball more. And maybe that's the thinking. Maybe it's just him doing whatever, but they are in the right thinking where they need to try to get him to throw the ball more so that they can not be so predictable. That was something that the Eagles caught on to in that Week 10 game. Despite them losing in the second half, I want to say they might have only scored 1 touchdown in the second half I
We got a lot of field goals,
Yeah, you
but
got a
not a
lot of
lot.
field goals, but it was what made it so easy for the Eagles to stop them in the second half is in halftime, it's all adjustments. They came out and they knew first and second down was a run play. And if it was anything under 3rd and 5, it was also a run play. If it was over 3rd and 5, then it was a pass play. And they could play it according to that. So that you can't really hide your quarterback anymore. And that's going to become an issue for the Commanders coming up in the future. But it was a good win, and your defense is still playing out of their mind.
Yeah, understand about that hiding thing. I don't like he's not like a lights out quarterback, but with the playoffs, defense and running still can take you pretty far in the playoffs. I still think that the main factor is obviously defense. And if you're able to really dominate the time of the possession, it doesn't really
Which I
matter.
believe you guys are first in the league now.
Yes, we have in terms of dominating possession, that's how we do, and it could possibly lead us to win. But I still think a lot of this is down to the play calling of Scott Turner. It's some of the decisions on the third downs is just very questionable, and you can't tell me that Taylor Heineke can't throw a lot of screens and slant passes. We rarely throw slants, especially to Terry McLaurin. I mean, you simply cannot. You will not be able to explain to me or try and convince me that Taylor Heineke cannot do that. Understand that he doesn't have the best arm, and some of his decisions and accuracy really shows that okay, he's ultimately a backup, but I think he's good enough considering how like the quality of players we have around him. I think that's why this offense has been hindered. For me, it's down to Scott Turner. Understand that Heineke isn't the best, but he's shown that when we get things right, we can win. And when what we're winning, it's like I said last year, he just needs to do enough.
And that, I mean, like, that's really the only way you guys can hope for success. Is there anything else you have from that Falcons game?
Um, from a Falcons game, no.
Did you see Falcons benched Marcus Mariota? Desmond Ritter's going in?
I did. I think it's about time.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised how late in the season it happened.
But moving on to the game, the Eagles game that got flexed to Sunday night that week, and I don't think we need to spend much time on this. That was an absolute domination. Eagles ran for 350 yards on them. Jalen Hurts had over 150 rushing yards, and Miles Sanders had 144 with 2 touchdowns. Eagles just absolutely dominated the Packers' weak run game, which is something they were looking to do. So they played a really good game. Now, if Aaron Rodgers, he got hurt obviously halfway through the game. He went out. Jordan Love came in. When Jordan Love came in, I got a little nervous. Jordan Love was slinging. So he made me a little bit nervous, but our defense did get the stop. But there came another injury in Gardner Johnson. Not ruptured, but he got a lacerated kidney, so he's out for the foreseeable future. They don't know a timeline on him yet. They didn't put him on IR because they don't know a timeline for him. So they're hoping he can be back before the playoffs, but they're not going to try to rush him back because they want him to be back for the playoffs. But like Zach Ertz, he played on a lacerated kidney. He missed 1 week, but they said the cut in his was so small that it didn't really mean anything, and the bigger issue was the broken rib that he had. But Zach Ertz played with one, so I'm sure when it comes to the playoffs, Gardner Johnson will want to be involved. But Eagles absolutely run all over the Packers. And I got to say, though, Christian Watson, he looks good. He had another touchdown in that Eagles game. He had another touchdown this past week, so he's up to, I believe, 7 touchdowns. He didn't score a touchdown until week 10, I believe, and he leads rookies in touchdowns this season. So he's starting to come out of the gates and play, but Eagles dominate a hurt Packers team, run the ball all over the place, and then that's really all I have for that game, and I'm just going to take it on to the Titans game because it's the tale of 2 different offenses in there, and that's what makes this offense so dangerous is they ran the ball all over the Packers, and then the next week they knew they couldn't do that against the Titans, so they passed the ball for over 400 yards against the Titans. So they really put on an offensive outing the past couple weeks. They dominate the Titans 35-10. And although we didn't have our episode last week, we still did do our weekly predictions, and I said in our weekly predictions that I thought the Eagles were going to lose this game. I believe that every time your team is playing good, sometimes you got to lose one, especially to another good team. And I do believe the Titans are a good team. They had the best record in the NFL last season, and Derrick Henry himself is a monster. And I thought we were going to have a little bit trouble with him, but they held him to 11 carries for 30 yards. They made their offense one dimensional. And when you make the Titans one dimensional, they're not going to be able to compete with you. So, Eagles put on a show against the Titans, and A.J. Brown had a day 8 receptions, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. And not saying these two are correlated, but right after that game, the Eagles GM was fired, or the Titans GM was fired. I don't think they will ever or fire Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman is
The way
genius.
things are looking, it's not seeming like they would for a while unless things drastically change.
He is a man of trades. I got to tell you what, I don't know how he does what he does, but he is a very good businessman.
I don't either. I'm still shocked at that Gardner Johnson trade. You fleeced him.
I think we fleeced, like, also for the Titans for A.J. Brown. I think we traded a first and a third. That's not terrible. A.J. Brown is a premier receiver in the league.
Yeah, considering his output this season and how well he's fit your offense, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, with him, that makes it to the point that Devontae Smith isn't covered so much in himself. We have the potential to have 2,000-yard receivers this year. A.J. Brown's going to break 1,000 yards, barring any injury or anything. Don't want him to get one of those. Knock on wood, but I believe he's already at 950 yards, somewhere around there. He's going to break 1,000. Devontae Smith is also up there in receiving, so we're going to have 2,000-yard receivers. If Dallas Goedert hadn't gotten hurt, it might have been 3. But, yeah, this offense is just clicking on all cylinders, especially after those 2 rough weeks. And I really like the way they're playing. Right now, if they keep on playing the way they're playing, I don't think there is any NFC team that can stop them.
On paper, no.
The only team that I believed might have been able to stop them was San Fran, but I don't think without Jimmy G. Don't get me wrong, Jimmy G is not a great quarterback. He's another quarterback where they try to hide him. But with that being said, Jimmy G has playoff experience. Brock Purdy does not. And they said with his broken foot, he might be able to get back if they were to make the Super Bowl. But then with Brock Purdy, I don't think they're doing that.
If they somehow even did make the Super Bowl, you wouldn't start Jimmy G over Purdy because you'd assume that Purdy played good enough to make it to the Super Bowl in the first place.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. But I don't think Brock Purdy in the playoffs is going to be ready for that. I mean, you get thrown in mid-season to your third string quarterback. He was Mr. Irrelevant. I just don't think. I think that's too big of a stage for him. So right now,
they do have an experienced team around him, an experienced coaching staff, so that may help them a little bit because they have more experience in terms of coaching, in terms of players than the Eagles do. So maybe I think that could be a factor. But when it comes down to it, if we're just looking on paper, I think now it's hard to say that the Niners are they're a solid matchup for the Eagles, considering what they lost.
Also, I was correct. A.J. Brown has 950 yards on the dot. But yeah, right now, I really don't see any team that can just go out and beat the Eagles. The Eagles are playing out of their minds right now. And the way that they bolstered up that defense, I am very confident. The Eagles have a pretty easy walk to the NFC chip, at least. And maybe even the Super Bowl.
On paper, I don't think it's going to be very difficult for anyone to beat you, but in practice, you never know with the playoffs. And considering you're in an inexperienced team, pretty much from top to bottom, there's still a little remnants from the Super Bowl team, but your coaching staff, a lot of those guys are gone. So I think that could be interesting to see.
But that's all I really have for the Titans game. Just 2 absolute back-to-back dominating games for the Eagles.
Yeah.
And going into this third game with against the Giants with that momentum. I really like what they're going into. But
You,
talking about the Giants, oh, go ahead. I'll let
you've
you.
shown like the variety in your offense, and I think that's the thing that makes you the most dangerous. Is you've shown that you can have a game where you have 300 team rushing yards, and then you showed a game where you had 400 team passing yards. So that's going to be a nightmare for any team to scheme against. I think the way to beat you guys is kind of what Washington did. Is if you want to beat them, dominate time of possession and take
Yeah,
advantage
hold the
of
ball.
every opportunity you have in the red zone. I know we didn't do that, but you're not going to get the amount of turnovers I think we got in the Commanders game.
Uh, yeah, and talking about the Giants, we'll go ahead and talk about your tie. The which I mean that I don't know. I feel like division games are the least expected to have a tie. Like just because they're so physical and so aggressive against each other, I feel like they're one of the least expected things for a tie. But you guys end up with a tie, and yes, obviously you'd rather a win, but a tie kind of helps you anyway.
Yeah, I'm just like it helps, and I would prefer it over a loss, considering it was pretty close to us losing because Graham Gano had a chance to win the game with a few seconds left with a 58-yard field goal, I think it was, but he
Yeah,
ultimately missed. But if we're looking at this, I think this is a game the Commanders easily could have won. But I think down the stretch, especially, our offense really faltered in very bad spots. If we look at our stats, we were 3 for 14 on third downs, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we didn't score more than 20 points. Um, yeah, so I think that's bad. We allowed 5 sacks, which that's never good. The offensive line has stepped up their play this season, but they're still far from being what I would consider a very good group. So I think that's part of the problem. Even though we do have success with running, but it we still got things to improve on. But if we're looking at the time possession numbers, especially this, like we had 41 minutes of time of possession to the Giants 28.
jeez.
Looking at that stat, that it's a game we should have won. Um, yeah, so it's definitely a game we should have won. Looking at those stats, just beside themselves. Brian Robinson had a big game, 21 for 96, no touchdowns. McLaurin eight receptions for 105 yards. He's shown that he can be he's a top 10 wide receiver in the league, I think, and he showed why. Um, and I saw a stat where it's like he joined a small group of wide receivers who had 3 straight 900-yard seasons to begin their career, so he joined that. But yeah, it's ultimately a frustrating game. Like what happened with the Falcons game, I think it was kind of hindered by the offensive play calling and the execution because there are some plays that really killed us, especially the third downs.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like I said, it's a division game. If I'm gonna just fast forward real quick because Eagles play the Giants this week, and if I'm being honest, I think you guys get the better of them in the following game because division games are the most physical.
Yeah,
Eagles and Giants is arguably the biggest rival for those two teams. Not in the NFL, but I mean, like the Eagles and Giants have go at it between those two a lot.
I would say it's the biggest NFC East rivalry still left because it used to be Washington and Cowboys, but
Washington
um,
has been so bad recently that it's not really a
yeah,
rivalry anymore.
since like the turn of like after 2012, I think it's where we really started to see downhill because even in the 2000s, you still saw when Santana Moss scored 2 touchdowns with like 5 minutes left. You still saw the RG3 stuff, but after that, it started to go downhill.
And I actually talked to one of the guys I work with. He's a Cowboys fan, and I asked him who the bigger rival is for the Cowboys because I hear both arguments, and he said if you look all time, it's Washington.
Yeah,
But if
it
you
just is.
he goes if you look recently, it's the Eagles because Cowboys and Eagles have been
Yeah.
going at it for the division for the most part between those two.
Yeah, the recent history. But if you go back, the Cowboys owner, I believe, copyrighted "Hail to the Redskins." if you look in the decade of the 70s, the team who beat the Tom Landry Cowboys the most was the George Allen Redskins. You go into the 80s, we had big playoff games. So yeah, it hurts to see that rivalry degraded down, but um yeah, it just hurts to see that rivalry. But I think this 3 week stretch is really going to take a toll on the Giants.
Yeah,
They're coming
that's what I was getting at.
against us, and then
And
you're obviously playing you coming off of two back-to-back impressive offensive performances, and then they're going to be playing us when we have rest.
and yeah, so what I was just trying to get at, this is a, I'm not going to do too much because we'll talk about it next week, but I just wanted to say, I think you guys will get the better of them in the next week because if you look at it, they played
We should.
3 back-to-back-to-back division games. Division games are the most physical games that you play. So if you're going 3 straight, that's really hurts the Giants. And like I said, especially with the Eagles and the Giants being one of the bigger rivalries just between in the division, then that is always a physical game. So I think the Giants are just going to be wiped by the time they get to that. You guys are coming off rest. So I think that'll be huge for you guys in the next week. And I think that'll bode well for you.
I think there's a feeling among the team that that game, the tie game, should have been a win for us, and I think we're going to see that, and we're really going to try and prove it. And it's a very important game for obviously playoff standings.
Yeah. But just taking a glimpse at that, let's move on to the Giants and Eagles game, which is coming up tomorrow for us. It is Saturday night as we record. So Eagles and Giants, obviously big division matchup. Giants, I believe, are 7-4-1 actually because they have the bye, but Eagles 11-1, and the Giants are hurt all over the place. They are struggling with the injuries. They have 3 offensive linemen out. One of their bigger tackles being one of those guys.
And Saquon's questionable.
Saquon's questionable with a neck. I think I heard that I can't remember his first name, McKinney. I want to say Xavier McKinney, but that doesn't sound right. He's out. He's one of the better safeties in the game. He is a great ball hawking safety, number 29 for the Giants. I want to say he's out. They're missing a lot of key guys there, and this is what I talked about at the beginning of the season. The Giants are really good up until they get injuries, and then they're going to be in trouble because they have a good 22. They don't have a good 53. So
yeah, they top end talent, but their depth play is pretty bad.
Yeah, so I think the Eagles should be able to get the best of the Giants here, especially the way they shut down Derrick Henry. They'll have Jordan Davis back, hopefully fully. They gave him a pitch count last week to try to keep him from overexerting that ankle. He lost 20 pounds while he was injured too, so he's way lighter on that ankle. And then you also have Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph still filling up the middle. They've done a really good job with the run in the past couple of weeks, and I think they should be able to stop Saquon even if he is good to go. Obviously, Daniel Jones is a guy that has run all over them, but I'm not really that worried about the run game.
He's run all over both of our teams, but we've seen like one way to beat the Giants this year is to get them playing behind and force them into a passing offense. And once that happens, they simply can't keep up. And I think you guys have the team and the depth chart to be able to do that because you can be a high-scoring offense when you need to. And once you create a lead, you can really grind out that time of possession and really force your opponents into tough positions.
I was just about to say, I think this is the same type of game that the Eagles need to have that like they had against the Titans. If you make Daniel Jones pass the ball, you're going to win. He is not a good passer. He's another guy who's been hated by the run game. Saquon Barkley is their entire offense. So if you find a way to shut down Saquon Barkley, then you're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Then on their defense, they have a really solid defense. I got to give them credit where credit is due. They have a really solid defense, but like I said, they're missing guys in their secondary. So this is another team that I think you could pass on quite easily and then maybe mix in the run as a changeup. But I think this is going to be another pass heavy game. Is it another 400-yard passing game for Jalen Hurts? I don't think so, but he should be able to have a big day. AJ Brown should have another big day. Should be able to break 1,000 in this game. It's definitely one that they should be able to take advantage of. And while yes, it's probably going to be a close game, I think the Eagles are going to take advantage. Move on to 12-1. But that's it because the Commanders have a bye week this week. You guys got a really late bye week.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when I saw
How
the
do you feel
schedule.
about that? Like just thinking about the team and how it could help them in the future with the playoffs and everything.
I kind of like it because like going into the playoffs, I think this is a decent time to get a break, and it's also I don't think it'll really kill our momentum too much. We'll have enough games left to be able to build that up again and to really pick that up. So I like the positioning. It gives us we'll be fresher than a lot of other teams. Give a lot of our players chances to nurse injuries. So I like it.
You also had that mini bye earlier in the season. The Eagles uh kind of got messed up in the way that their scheduling happened because they had the bye week, they played one game, and then they had the mini bye with the Thursday night the next week. So they kind of got screwed over in that sense. You guys had a break in between with your games, so you're getting that mini bye earlier in the season after you played the Bears, and then we're getting the we had the mini bye right after our bye. So we won't have you guys have a little bit of a luxury that the Eagles didn't have. And like you said, I think it's going to bode well for them going into the playoffs
Yeah.
where you're rested. And even do you listen to the Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey podcast?
I've heard a few episodes. Yes.
uh I was listening to that and they were saying they really like it later into the season so that they could be prepared for the playoffs.
Yeah.
And they said ultimately they do like having that Thursday night game and their bye week separated out so that they have that like Washington did this year. But
Yeah.
they said they do like the bye week a little bit later. Uh that though will close up the NFL for us. We are going to move over to the NHL where both teams still struggling, but the Flyers are starting to get a couple players back. And last time we talked, like I said, it's been a while, but Flyers were on a 10-game losing streak, and they have finally snapped that streak. They snapped it against the Islanders, and they've gotten a couple players back. James Van Riemsdyk has come back. Travis Konechny has come back. Scott Lawton has come back. Uh, Tony DeAngelo got injured for a little bit, but he's back. And I believe Cam Atkinson is just on the cusp of being back. He is like questionable every night if he's gonna be back. And then obviously Sean Couturier is still out for the foreseeable future. But I am feeling a lot more confident. They're playing better against good teams. Still struggling to score. The Flyers are the worst scoring team in the NHL with
Wow.
2.5 goals per game. But Carter Hart keeps them in so many games. It is unbelievable. He is having an unbelievable season. Even if the stats don't say it, he is just playing out of his mind right now. He has started each of the last 6 games for the Flyers. And I think that's because they've been going every other day. They haven't had a 2-day break in a while, but they also haven't had any back-to-backs in a while. So I think that gives him the ability to play more games in a row. And in those games, he's playing lights out. They went 2-3 on a 5-game homestand, lost that last home game to the Capitals, but which was ended in a 4-1. But empty nets make games look so much spread out than they actually were. Like the final of that game really was a 2-1 game.
Yeah. Ultimately, but I think we need to talk about Travis Konechny getting mad because
I didn't even see it. I haven't been able to see a lot of the games recently.
so Ovi it was after we scored the first empty netter. Ovi they pulled obviously and Ovi went in to score one and he like went in really slow and was deliberate and shot it in. And then when he skated by Travis Konechny, he got his panties in a twist and got mad at him for some reason. And then so Ovi pushed him and got in his face, and it started this little like
Kerfuffle.
scrum. Yeah, at the end of the game. So I just think that's one of the bigger things that's happened.
I mean,
Over
I
the
think that's just the disrespect factor.
I mean, I understand that, but
It's
I
like
mean,
when you shoot at the goalie after the whistle blows.
no, I think that's different. But you can't get mad because it's you pulled the goalie for the second time and you put yourself in this situation. You can't really get mad at it. Like I understand the shooting at the goalie after the whistle. That's a completely different thing. That's a space cadet move. But I think this was definitely a little different than that.
Had it been earlier in the game, I would say, that's Travis Konechny's game, just trying to get under people's skin.
But
But
it was
the
the
game
end
was
game.
already over. Yeah,
Yeah, there's no reason to do that.
like I said, I didn't see it, so I can't really speak to it. But
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, though, just think these guys have been losing and losing and losing, and I'm sure it's just getting to them, and occasionally they get fed up with it.
It's positive though that they're fighting back because especially last year, the game we went to when they got
Nine to
absolutely
two. Oh my gosh.
yeah, we were at that game. It was great. We had great seats. They didn't fight back. Like there was not a single fight, and they didn't even really try and start one. So
That
it's good that they're starting to fight back. And for the city of brotherly love, who's supposed to be tough, I think Tortorella's starting to really change the mentality of this team.
Tortorella is. I could just go on a. In fact, I will go on just my mini rant about Tortorella. Like he is such a good coach for this city, and he just makes everyone try every single night, and you see it. And yes, they're not winning, but at the beginning of the season, I said Flyers just need to try this season, get the young guys to play, let them try, and just get the young guys points, and that's what they're doing. He has not been disappointed at all in the team, and he said that. Like, yes, we're losing. He said yes, they're losing a ton of games, but he has never gone into a game afterwards and been like, that was a terrible game. I'm depressed in the way we played. He says every single time that they gave effort. Do they have games where, they don't look sharp and maybe they don't look like they give effort the entire 60 minutes? Yes, but at the end of the day, they're at least giving effort to a portion of it. And whether they get smoked or they keep it a close game, they are playing hard. And that's what Tortorella brings to the city. And I love Tortorella as a coach here.
That's all you can ask for this season. And the thing about Tortorella is there's no middle ground with him. You're either going to commit to him 100% or it's going to go horribly wrong, like it did for Patrick Laine and Pierre Luc Dubois.
And also, I mean, the in those games that they were losing, like on their skid, I think if you take five of the starting top six forwards plus a main D man, a top D man from any team in the NHL, I think
You're
they're
going
gonna
to struggle.
struggle too. Like I don't think you understand. They were having 21 and 22-year olds on their top six forward line. So that makes the team a little bit choppy for them, but they did end up snapping the skid. They're showing emotion in the games. They're not just going through the motions, which is huge. They're trying, and yes, they may be losing, but there's still effort into it. They care about the game, and that's what matters. I think Torts is very proud of the way that they are playing, whether they win or lose, and he's getting what he wants to in determining who's going to be on the team next season. And I think what also makes players buy in just a little bit more is this year in his first season as a head coach, he averages between 60 and 70 points, standings points per team that he has coached in the first season. And then every time after that, he has taken their team to the playoffs and advanced at least one round the next year after that. So, say he doesn't make the playoffs the first season, the next season he will at least make the playoffs. And then the season after that, he'll get one round further than he did last time. And then next year, one round further. If that makes sense. Like he keeps on
And then you
building.
get fired.
And then either his contract expires or whatever.
Something
But
goes wrong.
yeah. He so each year he keeps on getting better and better as a coach. And I think what makes these guys buy in is the fact that he has said to them, look, this is a year for me to determine who's going to be on this team in the future. And I think that most of these guys know, with the talent they have and the way that they're playing and the coach they have, They know that this is going to be a competitive team in the future, and whether it's, playoff contender, Stanley Cup contender, hopefully, they know they're going to be contending, and that makes them want to be a part of this team. I think that,
It's easier for everyone to prove themselves.
yeah, I think it just makes it a little bit more for players to go after, if that makes sense. Like, they know
Yeah.
that they're going to be contending for something, and they want to be involved in that. So I think that's huge. And Cam York, he just made his first NHL appearance this season, so they brought him up, and he's really starting to try to get the young guys ready for the future, and I'm really excited. Even though this season they're not going to do anything, I'm not mad about the way the season's going. They're doing what they're
Yeah.
doing, and I wanted effort, and that's what I'm getting. I think that's enough from the Flyers. Let's talk about a team who isn't that far from the Flyers in the standings. Like I said, 3 years of mediocrity from Peter Laviolette, and that's what you guys are getting.
Mediocrity for our standards, but before I start talking about the negatives and how inconsistent we've been, I'm gonna talk about some positives. Both Nicholas Backstrom and Tom Wilson have skated for the first time in practice, so that's a promising sight. But going on into their play, it's just been more the same thing. A lot of inconsistency. We haven't really been able to get solid win streaks down. Going all the way back to the Canucks game, we had a great game, 5-1. And then the next game against the Kraken, we lost 2-3, and that was a comeback win against the Kraken, very tough. We were just outplayed by the Flames. We won a tough game against the Oilers, which was great. We won against the Flyers 4-1, and then we won against the Kraken 4-1. So that's the first 3-game win streak we've had this season, but it's not going to last. I mean, we're still going to get the inconsistency because of the amount of injuries we have, and it's just not going to change.
Yeah, and I mean and when any team, like I said, for the Flyers, when you have multiple of your top 6 forwards out, it's gonna create problems. I mean, because obviously the Capitals have a lot of talent and veteran talent at that, so they know what they're doing. A lot of them have already won a cup and are still with the team, so they have the veteran talent. But like I said, the injuries hurt everyone.
Yeah, for me, it's injuries, and I just think that the team is possibly at its end with the coaching staff.
Yeah, but ultimately, not great seasons for our teams. I do want to go over the standings because obviously it's been a bit. Devils still on a tear. Did you see that Jack Hughes had a 6-minute shift last night?
Yeah, that is utterly ridiculous.
And it's not like he was stuck out there. There was 7 stoppages of play in his shift. And then before that, the shift right before that, he had a minute and a half shift. So he went 7.5 minutes of the last 8 minutes of the game.
That is insane. And also, speaking of insane performances, Tage Thompson
Yeah.
went off. First off, he tied the record. He scored 4 goals in a single period, and then he got another goal. I'm pretty sure he ended the night with 7 points, maybe.
Oh, I will double check on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up real quick. But that is just insane. Tage Thompson is looking like an insane prospect that is going to be very, very fun to watch.
And I mean, dude, the Sabres have a lot of talent altogether there.
Yeah, they got some very good young guys.
He had 6 points.
Yeah, 5 goals and an assist.
But yeah, standings. New Jersey still going off 21-5-1 with 43 points. They are tied for the best team in the league right now. And then after them, like I said, the standings are just kind of flipped right now. Carolina still up top, 15-6-6 with 36 points. Pittsburgh 16-8-4 with 36 points. New York Islanders 17-12-0 with 34 points. The Rangers 14-10-5, 33 points, who I thought were going to be the best team in the division this year. Washington 13, 12, and 4 with 30 points. Philly 9, 13, and 6 with 24 points. And Columbus 9, 15, and 2 with 20 points. The Columbus is struggling a lot for a team who picked up a lot of talent.
Yeah, I thought they're going to be significantly better this year with Johnny Hockey and Patrick Laine.
Yeah, and they just haven't been able to create anything. But anything else from you in the NHL?
Nope.
Before we go on to the MLB, I do want to mention Bomburger to you guys. It's a food truck based out of Loudoun County. Two college-age kids trying to create their own business and do it right. They use all grass-fed beef, all natural products. They go all over the place in Loudoun County. They do catering. I would definitely check them out. I've had their food, very good. But they've changed it since I've had it, so I should probably go check them out again. But they changed their recipe. I would definitely go check them out. Bomburger Food Truck. They have Instagram and Facebook where they post all their stuff and they cater. But that's Bomburger Food Truck on Instagram and Facebook if you want to check out where they're going. So go look them up. Moving on into the MLB, just a couple more things to add on to the off season before we get into the quiet parts, as the free agency has gotten into the brunt of the big signings. Cody Bellinger to the Cubs, Jacob DeGrom to the Rangers. Any other big
Aaron
names
Judge.
aside from
Xander Bogaerts left the Red Sox, went to San Diego. Aaron Judge re-signs with New York, which I'm happy for that because I'm a pseudo Yankees fan. Obviously, DeGrom leaving New York, and then New York subsequently.
Oh yeah, they signed Verlander,
replacing him with Verlander, which okay.
I was so nervous because when I first heard Verlander went to the Mets, I was like, "Are you serious?" Now they have Scherzer, DeGrom, and Verlander. And then when I texted you, you were like, "Oh yeah," and DeGrom went to the Rangers, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I can breathe."
Yeah, but the Mets, they re-signed Nimmo and Diaz, but the big signings that we're obviously going to talk about are T1 Walker signing with the Philadelphia Phillies and
Trey Turner.
A guy named Trey Turner signing with Phillies, and they let Gene Segura go.
Let's hang on. I want to save Trey Turner for the end because I think we would go on a lot longer. First off, we'll talk about probably the smallest of the three. Philly signed Matt Strom. He's a bullpen guy, left-hander, which they do have a lot of right-handers in their bullpen. So left-handed guy. He had a 3.5 ERA last season for Boston. A guy who I'm like, everyone's like, oh, that's not a great ERA, but anytime I see an ERA under 5 for a Phillies bullpen, I get excited.
You're like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not something that the Phillies are used to. And you never know when a guy is gonna catch heat. Not this past season, but the season before that. Excuse me. The Phillies were looking to trade away Zach Wheeler before the season started, and they couldn't find a deal they liked, and they kept him. And he ended second in NL Young Cy Young voting. So you never know when a pitcher is gonna catch heat, and hopefully that happens to him this season. So they get a bullpen pitcher, and then they signed Taijuan Walker from the Mets, who last season had a very quiet 12-5 record with a 3.5 ERA as a starter, which is relatively good for a starter. So he is now added to the rotation. And with Zach Wheeler, Ranger Suarez, Aaron Nola, and Taijuan Walker, I'm liking this Phillies rotation quite a bit.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Even if one of them doesn't really perform all that well, there's other guys that pick up the slack. So that's
if you look at it, like Ranger Suarez I still believe he has yet to reach his full potential. He started out as a bullpen pitcher with the Phillies, and he started moving closer and closer and closer to being a full starter for the Phillies, and now he is. And he still has potential to grow a bit more. He's still a very young guy. He's only 27, I believe. So he's still young for a pitcher. He still has years to develop and get his full power under him. So I don't believe he's fully done yet, and he still has around a 3 ERA. So he's still really good and still developing and still has miles to go before he reaches his maximum potential. Taijuan Walker, like I said, he had a very quiet, amazing year for the Mets. When you're behind Scherzer and DeGrom, it's very easy for you to go under the radar. And then obviously Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, both Cy Young candidates for the Phillies last season. And I didn't see it, but last season Aaron Nola was top five in quite a bit of categories. I'm gonna see if I can find the page that had the stats, but Aaron Nola had a really outstanding season that I don't think many people realized how good of a season it actually was. Uh, but obviously, Zach Wheeler really good with the team too. So going to obviously the biggest signing that I think we want to talk about, and one that I know you're excited to talk about because I know how much you wanted the Phillies to get him. Trey Turner is going to the Phillies. 11 years, 300 mil. Big guy after letting Gene Segura walk. And I'm going to miss Gene Segura. I really do like Gene Segura, but Trey Turner is quite the upgrade.
Cry me a river. But okay, you want to talk about losing players in the span of 3 or 4 seasons? We lost Harper, Rendon, Scherzer, and the person we kept out of all of those people is Steven Strasburg, who we gave a huge contract to. We also kept Patrick Corbin, who's, I believe we have the two worst contracts in the league with Strasburg and Corbin. Those are the two we kept. We lost the rest of them, and also we lost Soto. Yeah, so you want to cry about losing Segura? I really don't want to hear it.
I'm not crying about Segura, but I
But
am sad.
you're sad about it, but you probably shouldn't be because guess who we signed? Jameer Candelario.
Who?
Do you know who that is?
Not a clue.
The only reason I know who that is because he had an MLB The Show card I used a lot in VR. Besides that, I'm just
Real quick,
Phillies.
I did
Phillies, Tristan.
real quick. I did find that Aaron Nola stat. He was second in innings pitched in the MLB, first in FWAR, tied third in base on balls, seventh in WHIP, fourth in strikeouts, and tied third in complete games. So
Pretty good season.
yeah, he had a really good season. But yes, Trey
There
Turner
needs to be a document. There needs to be a documentary about the Nats a few years down the line. How like all these players just
up and left. Yeah.
yeah, but the reason I'm so mad about this is because you're another genuine contender. Because I think this season was like it had elements of a Cinderella run to it.
Yeah.
I think this kind of moves you up a category into it seems very likely that you could possibly go back to the NLCS at the very minimum.
And I mean, you look at it so with Trey Turner now being locked up for 11 years, both Trey Turner and Bryce Harper are locked up until they're 39 on the team. Trey Turner is only 29, so he's going to be locked up for a while. But right field, Bryce Harper, obviously the future. He's locked up for another 8 years, I believe. Brandon Marsh is going to be our future everyday center fielder. He's with us for another 7 years. And then in left field, we have Kyle Schwarber. He's going to be there for another 3 years. Castellanos, also an outfielder. He's there for another 4 years. Rhys Hoskins is the only base player that isn't going to be there for a while. He has one more year that left on his contract this year,
and I think he's gonna leave after his contract expires. I personally think.
And then second base Trey Turner, he's going to be playing second. He's there for 11 years. Bryson Stott still on a rookie contract, so he'll be there for a while. I don't know exactly how many years, but he's going to be there for a while because, like I said, he's a rookie. Then third base is Alec Boehm, another guy who's on a rookie contract, so still quite a bit of term left. And JT Realmuto is another 3-year guy at least.
And you have a few decent rotational players. Like if when you need, you can put Derek Hall in there.
Yeah. So who's also another rookie. So they have a lot of young guys for the future.
This team's a little worrying considering like improvements you made to your bullpen, to your starting rotation, and obviously to your lineup, I think you kind of solved my biggest problem with them is your lineup is no longer just a bunch of power hitters. You have guys like Marsh and Turner who are fast and very good situational hitters who can get you RBIs when
Get the
needed. And
contact.
you
Bryson
got the
Stott is
power. Yeah, you got Stott and Bohm who are kind of like
Stott and
I
Bohm
think
are both using or Stott's or Bohm's not as good, but Stott is easily the best player on the field who is good at using the entire field. And I mean that's not as much of an advantage as it was with the shift now
yeah, the
gone.
shift's gonna be gone now.
But it is an advantage still because you never
It
know where
still
it's going to
is.
go. But
Yeah.
with the shift, it was a bigger advantage because you couldn't shift. But he's really good at using the entire field. And then they also have Alec Boehm, who in July led the MLB in batting average over 400. So he
Yeah.
he's another good contact hitter. So they now have 4 or 5 contact hitters, and then they have the
You
power
have
to go with it.
Yeah, and for Bowman Stott, I think their kind of top end is like they'll have like 20 something to 30 something home runs, but they'll have pretty high like RBI numbers. So you have a bunch of different types of hitters on your team,
Yeah.
and I think that could prove to be a very rough time for opposing pitchers.
And so now the biggest thing for the Phillies is they have to get that bullpen pitching straight. If they do,
Yeah, and I honestly think you just need one or more, like one or two more arms because we've seen that some of your bullpen guys are really
yeah, they
starting to
had
perform.
3 really strong bullpen guys last season.
Yeah,
Who again, all 3 of those guys for the most part, young guys. Sir
yeah.
Anthony Dominguez, Jose Alvarado, both younger guys. I can't even think of who the third one is off the top of my head. But yeah, they have a couple other younger guys in their pitching rotation in the bullpen for them. So if they can get the bullpen fixed and straight, then I think they are serious contenders. And the NL East is probably the best division in baseball right now. I mean, the Mets, the Braves, and the
I'm
Phillies
not
all playoff
I don't
teams.
know anymore, considering that I think the Mets are going to get worse because they lost to Grom, and I'm not sure if they'll be able to keep it up because it feels like there's going to be some like they're going to lose some of that like specialness of their team if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. The Braves they're still decent, but the Dansby Swanson situation is still up in the air. There's uh this was a posted yesterday MLB trade rumors. There's no legit negotiations between Braves and Swanson. So that if that is true, they're going to lose a like big portion of their team. And even if they get Dansby back, I still think that the Phillies have now moved up into the favorites of the NL East.
Yeah. And I mean, it's that I'm kind of on that both ways. I think Philadelphia strives in the underdog seat. Obviously, last year, like we said, the World Series run was a bit of a Cinderella story. When the Eagles won the Super Bowl, they weren't favored. They were the number one team in the NFL that season, and they weren't favored in a single game in the playoffs. Like they were riding the underdog bus the entire way to their Super Bowl win. I like Philadelphia as the underdogs, and I think it stresses them out less because if when you have expectations to you and you don't succeed, it kind of hurts you. I like the underdog mentality. Obviously, I do like a good team too. I like a good team a lot, but the underdog mentality I think helps a lot too.
I understand, and that I think the Nats had that in our
Exactly.
World
Same with the
Series,
Braves.
but yeah, but I don't really think that mentality is going to be the same because the signing of Trey Turner and T1 Walker are going to put those expectations on you because you can't be the underdog forever.
Yeah.
For example, for a while, the Red Sox, even after they broke the curse of the Bambino and won 2 in the early 2000s, they were still trying to paint themselves as the underdogs, but things change.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean it's you can't there's a first time for everything. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's I'm not too worried about it. Like I said, I love a good team and I'm excited Trey Turner's on the team, but I my last parting message there is I really wish we could have gotten Gene Segura that World Series. That was his first ever playoff run. I love Gene Segura. He did so much for the Phillies, but Trey Turner obviously a huge upgrade.
I'm gonna play you a song on the world's smallest violin.
And the last thing before we close out, do you have anything else for the MLB?
I'm pretty sure the Nats signed a pitcher.
Oh, so no.
I
They did have the Rule 5
Trevor
draft.
Williams.
Who?
Trevor Williams. He was a Met.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I think I saw that. But
We got the second pick in the draft though, so that's good.
and they did the Rule 5 draft, but I'm not entirely sure who those players were. MLB and NHL, their drafts just confuse me. I don't even try. There's just so many people coming from so many avenues.
Yeah,
It's
the NHL
confusing.
one for me is especially like messy because you got players coming from semi-pro leagues like the KHL, but then you have college and junior leagues.
Yeah. There's a lot, and like NHL and MLB, you're literally drafting children. Like these kids aren't even 18 yet, and you're drafting them. So that's just a little past my pay grade.
Yeah, NBA, NFL, that's more my speed.
But last thing that I wanted to mention before we get out of here, because we forgot to mention it earlier, and I think it's pretty big NFL news, is Baker Mayfield getting signed to the Rams.
Yeah, that is very big after getting released by the Panthers. He joins the Rams on 48 hours notice to study the offense, leads a last-minute drive going 98 yards without a single timeout.
Yeah, I mean that was impressive, and you know what's even crazier? How crazy just it shows how the NFL is. Imagine a Heisman winner, first overall pick, getting traded to, or no, he got waived and then claimed by the former NFL champions after he failed with his second team, got waived, got claimed by the former NFL champions who were 3-8.
Yeah,
Like that is just wild.
That's so crazy to think about, and we're gonna see another Baker like story arc. He's gonna have like good games against crappy teams, and then once he faces a good team, he's gonna do bad, and then there's gonna be that video of him dancing.
Yeah.
When he was on the Browns, and meme pages are gonna have a field day like with his awful stats. So that's Baker. That's Baker.
Do you think? I think Sean McVay picked him up just to block the 49ers.
Possibly, and I think it could do good for the Rams. They could go from like the 5th pick to maybe the 11th or
Maybe.
7th.
Hey, as long as the Saints keep losing, I'm happy. Eagles could go for a deep playoff run and have a top 5 pick.
Please,
that is the dream right there.
You guys are insufferable as it is.
Okay, but it's
I'm right. You know I'm right.
I don't know. Anyway, we are going to close it off there as long as you have nothing else to tack on at the end there. All right, so we're going to close it off. It's going to end off this week's episode. You guys can check out our weekly NFL predictions. We do those on YouTube, Brotherly Love in the District, where we also post a video version of this podcast if you want to watch. We have our Instagram, TikTok, and email on this side of the screen. And Jake, yeah, there you go. All that stuff there. So if you guys want to DM us comments, questions, email us comments and questions to bring on here, you guys can do that there. And we also post big news on our Instagrams and TikToks. And with that, we come out with these every week. So if you guys want to check us out on Apple and Spotify, rate us and review us. And with that, that is going to end it off there. So we will see you guys next week.
See you later.